Okay. Yeah. Namaste. A very warm welcome to the webinar on digital technology innovations, case studies from India and the Asia Pacific region. This is the fifth session of the series, and it will highlight terrestrial and non-terrestrial technologies for rural and remote areas. I'm Charumati, and I'm Group Leader at CDOT, coordinating the PM Vani and Wi-Fi development programs at CDOT. Today, for the session, we have distinguished speakers from the academia, startups, standardization bodies, policymakers, and solution providers. Looking forward to hear from the speakers on the initiatives taken in their respective areas to provide the right solution for bridging the digital divide in the rural and remote areas. Before we begin, here are a few hygiene announcements. All attendees will be muted throughout the workshop. If you have any questions for the speakers, please type them in the questions tab. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on the TSDSI website within the next few days. Speakers are requested to kindly deliver their presentations within the allotted time durations. A few material on ITU and TSDSI work in this space are available in the Handouts tab at the dashboard of the tool. Participants may like to download these for their reference. We have the distinguished honor to have with us today Ms. Atsuko Okuda, who is the Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific ITU, Dr. Pankaj Kumar Dalela, Director CDOT, Mr. Gaurav Kharod, Managing Sales Director, India and South Asia, Intelsat, Dr. Mohammad Danesh, Chief Technology Officer, Transcelestial Technologies, Ms. Neha Satak, Founder and CEO, Astrom Technologies Private Limited, Professor Radha Krishna Gandhi, Assistant Professor, IIT Madras, Mr. Supri Tientam Noon, Division Director of Plan and Policy Division, Universal Service Bureau, National Broadcasting and Telecommunications Commission, Thailand, Professor Uday Desai, Strategy Consultant and former Director, IIT Hyderabad, Dr. Waleed Matlauti, Head Future Networks and Spectrum Management Division, International Telecommunication Union. Thank you, madams and sirs, for joining the webinar. I now invite Ms. Atsuko Okuda to give the opening remarks for the webinar. Ms. Atsuko Okuda was appointed as the Regional Director for Asia and Pacific ITU in April 2020. Prior to the new assignment, she was the Chief of the ICT and Development Section of the ICT and Disaster Risk Reduction Division of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, ESCAP, in Bangkok, Thailand from 2015 to 2020. At ESCAP, she promoted the development of regional broadband connectivity and inclusive broadband through the implementation of the Asia Pacific Information Superhighway Initiative. Ms. Atsuko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Charumati P. and Professor Uday Desai, Strategy Consultant, TSDSI, and former Director, IIT Hyderabad, distinguished speakers, presenters, and participants. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Atsuko Okuda, Regional Director of the ITU Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. I am very pleased to be part of this fifth session of the webinar series entitled Digital Technology Innovations, Gaps, Case Studies from India and the Asia and the Pacific region. May I first express my sincere appreciation to the Telecommunication Standards Development Society India, TSDSI, for co-organizing this event with ITU, and to the Department of Telecommunications and other government ministries of India for their support in the organization of this webinar series. Ladies and gentlemen, our ITU 2021 Facts and Figures report revealed how the internet access improved during the pandemic. While almost 800 million people joined the internet worldwide between 2019 and 2021, 2.9 billion people still remain offline. In Asia and the Pacific, this is almost 1.7 billion people, or around 58.6% of the total unconnected population. Doing more of the same may not necessarily help us to address the challenges fast enough. To connect the unconnected, new digital innovations are urgently needed. Although the limelight is often shown on emerging technologies that require faster and more robust connectivity, this only exacerbates the divide between those with the internet and those without. We need to go back to basics and connect the last mile to ensure inclusive digital transformation and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Today's session brings us to the essence of the topic. The esteemed speakers will share with us how technologies can not only connect the last mile, but also how cooperation among the different connectivity actors can facilitate regional cooperation and deliver digitization for vulnerable groups. Ladies and gentlemen, ITU is not standing still in this regard. Last month, we signed a host country agreement with the government of India to open a new area office and innovation center in New Delhi. Through the generous support of our Indian counterparts, this office will not only bring ITU closer to our member countries in South Asia, but also will promote digital innovations throughout Asia and the Pacific. By leveraging best practices from India and the other parts of the region, the Innovation Center will serve as a vehicle to bring forward lessons learned and good practices from the joint TSDSI ITU webinar series and connect the unconnected among the diverse digital innovation communities and ecosystems. Additionally, ITU is hosting the quadrennial World Telecommunication Development Conference, or WTDC, from 6 to 16 June 2022 in Kigali, Rwanda. As the flagship conference of the ITU's development sector, WTDC sets the strategies for the development of telecommunications and ICT with the theme connecting the unconnected to achieve sustainable development. Additionally, back to back with WTDC, we will also be hosting the Generation Connect Youth Summit from 2nd to 4th June. This youth summit will lead to a youth call to action that will capture the vision, priorities, and aspirations of young people across the world for digital transformation. To support WTDC, we have launched the Partner to Connect Digital Coalition. This innovative platform is engaging all stakeholders to mobilize and pledge resources, partnerships, and commitments to foster meaningful connectivity and digital transformation in the hardest to connect communities, with a focus on, but not limited to, least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small islands developing states. Pledges do not have to be financial, but can also take the form of policy, advocacy, and program. The Partner to Connect Pledge platform is live now. More information can be found in the handouts section of the webinar tool. I urge all participants and experts in the room today to be part of WTDC, Youth Summit, and P2C. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope that the session today will not only disseminate knowledge, but also build actions, networks, and next steps towards achieving digital transformation and more inclusive and sustainable and prosperous digital future for all of us. Thank you again, and I look forward to the stimulating discussion today. Back to you, Ms. Charumati.
Thank you, Mr. Tsuko, for your remarks. And it is really very delighted. I'm very delighted to hear that the new office is being opened in India, which will definitely in the South Asia, it is going to boost the presence of ITU. Very delighted to hear the same. So now I would invite Mr. Professor Uday Desai to give the opening remarks for the webinar. Professor Uday Desai is the founding director of Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. He's Professor Emeritus at IIT Hyderabad. He's also the Chancellor of Anurag University. He's also Honorary Professor of Wusung University, South Korea. He was Mentor Director of IIT Bhilai from August 2016 to January 2017 and Mentor Director for IIIT Chittoor during the first 5 years of the founding of IIIT Chittoor. Professor Desai is currently associated with TSDSI as strategy consultant. Professor Desai, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Charumati, for the kind introduction. And it's indeed my pleasure and my honor to say a few words to kick off this webinar. First of all, let me say that I resonate with the ideas and the thoughts that were expressed by Ms. Okuda-san. Okay, this is a very, very important topic that today's webinar is addressing, namely, looking at terrestrial and non-terrestrial technologies for rural and remote areas, or in broadly what people nowadays talk about, connecting the unconnected. Okay, and this is important, as was highlighted by Okuda-san, not just for India, okay, but across the globe. Okay, I don't have the exact data, but it is likely that nearly 60 to 70% of the world population live in some remote areas. Definitely, that would be the case if you look at developing countries or what we often call emerging economies. According to Internet and Mobile Association of India, the rural population of India is 948 million, of which 299 million, about 32%, are active Internet users. In comparison, the urban population is 485 million, of which 323 million, about 67%, are active Internet users. These numbers are constantly increasing, thus we should take these numbers as ballpark numbers. Of the 784 million Internet users, bulk of them have access to Internet via mobile phones. Thus, mobile Internet access is key to India's Internet connectivity, and definitely a lot more so for India's rural area. And I would venture to say that this would be the case not just for India, but any rural area or remote area. The Internet access is eventually going to be through mobile technologies. And this is in fact one of the big mandate that both TSDSI has as well as what ITU has. And in that sense, the synergy between the two will enhance these technologies and make access possible for a large number of population living in remote areas. Currently, it is the telcos who provide internet service in remote parts of India using 4G, and in some cases where 4G is not available, we do have 3G. In fact, I myself have internet access using mobile phone in remote parts of Mizoram. Okay. Now, what are the technologies that we should promote for enhancing internet access in remote areas? I'm just going to briefly touch upon it. I'm sure the deliberations in the webinar will talk a lot more about it, a lot more details. There are people I can see from the panels that have been set up that they have actually worked in those domains, and they will say a lot more about it from the experience, both in terms of developing technologies and also in terms of implementing technologies in remote areas and rural areas. As mentioned by me earlier, currently it is 4G and in some places 3G. It is playing a very strong role out here. In hilly areas, unfortunately, terrestrial 4G does not work very well. And India has large chunks of areas and large amount of population living in hilly areas. Therefore, when we talk about remote areas, we need to look at technologies which will work for hilly areas or mountainous areas and technologies which will work for the plains. And they may not necessarily be the same out here. Thus, in that context, I think we need satellite-based internet access on mobile phones. Okay, something akin to Starlink. In India, if you look at it, Jio and Airtel are planning to launch satellite-based internet access. They have already announced it, but of course, it will take some time, to get access to satellites, launch the satellites, etc., etc. To me, this will be a big boon for remote areas. Urban areas too will obviously benefit. There is no doubt about it. But for remote locations, it will be a big boon because you do not have to spend time laying out massive infrastructure for access to internet. Satellite-based internet access for remote area is a must for the overall growth, in my opinion, and development of rural area. I suspect the same may be true for rural areas in other parts of the world, particularly Africa, South America, Latin America, and similar areas across the globe. The other approach is India has been working on a mixed mode approach, what we call today BharatNet. The idea here is to have fiber all the way to Gram Panchayat. A lot of work has been done, and Gram Panchayat, to sort of briefly describe, it would be either at the sub-district level or at the block level. That is what they are planning. So fiber will go up to, say, the sub-district level. Okay, and this lot of work has been done. Of course, a bit of work is still there. And from the sub-district level, the local access, last mile access, as Okuda-san was talking about, will be based on wireless. It could be even Wi-Fi at that particular point in time. Now, this is something also which is very important. Of course, there is a fair amount of effort in laying the fiber all the way to the sub-district level. The other approach which India has made a big effort and which has been quite successful is what we used to call 5Gi. Now, of course, it has been merged with 5G. And it is in fact a technology to provide better and affordable 5G internet access in remote areas. This all started with what we used to earlier call, low mobility large cell. This is in fact the situation in remote areas, at least all the remote areas of India, and I presume it is the same for remote areas of maybe many African countries, and as I mentioned earlier, many South American and Latin American countries. Okay, so in that sense, I think India has made a lot of efforts and explored a lot of technologies to take internet access to remote areas and what we would call in Indian context many a time rural areas. In conclusion, mobile internet access in remote areas is vital, and one must use multiple technologies to achieve it. To assume that one technology like 5G will do the job perhaps may not necessarily be the best thing. Satellite as well as terrestrial, and a combination of the two is what will achieve good connectivity in remote areas. So with these few words, once again, I wish all the best for the deliberations that are going to take place. And these are very important deliberations. And I'm sure we will need to deliberate on this much more as we go along in this particular direction. So thank you very much. And please, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Professor Desai. I think you have summarized all the technology and initiatives that what we have taken in India. And if the all over India we are able to cover, then I think we have the technology for all over the world. Because in India we have all the kinds of terrains, as rightly pointed out by you. If all over India we are able to provide these services, then the world is not far. We have the right technology for all the rural areas of the world. And now we begin with our next session, the invited talk. And I invite Mr. Supri Tientam Noon, Division Director of Plan and Policy Division, Universal Service Bureau, National Broadcasting and Telecommunications Commission, NBTC, Thailand, to speak on Universal Service Obligation. Mr. Supri Tientam Noon leads in development of the 5 years Universal Service Master Plan, which improving the policies and plans of the national USO to be more efficient, as well as promoting and developing the extension of telecommunication networks and services, wired and wireless, to be inclusively distributed, particularly in the local, remote and faraway areas. He also plays a leading role in integrating the propulsions of USO to be more efficient, both between the government agencies and between the public and private sector, in order to provide opportunity and development for the people residing in local remote areas to be able to access and engage the basic telecommunication services, as well as to be educated with respect to utilizing the information and communication technology and the internet. Mr. Supri, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh, I'm not sure if you can see my presentation, the slides.
Slides are not yet visible.
Is the slide on?
Not yet. I think it.
Okay, I don't see the button to get on my slide.
Asif, Sonia?
Asif, can you give the presentation rights to Mr. Supri?
I've just given it.
Yeah, we are now able to see. I think the settings window has to be just minimized and we can see your slide.
Okay, now you can see my slide already?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Okay, good morning, participants. It's my pleasure to present you as representatives of the Office of the National Broadcasting and Telecommunications Commission, or the Office of the NBTC. My name is Superintendent, Division Director, Acting Director of the Universal Service Bureau.
So your voice is not very clear. Your voice is not very clear. If you could speak a little louder or closer to the microphone.
Okay. It's better.
A little better.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. You can be just closer to the microphone so that there are no breaks.
Okay. Today, we talk about the Thailand Universal Service Obligation, what we call USO in short. The main objective of the USO is to provide telecommunications infrastructure and services to reach two dimensions. Firstly, the physical side, providing throughout the country, especially on the countryside, where the market condition seems not to be success. And the second one, providing the social aspects, such as elderly, disabilities, low-income people. We categorize our country into 4 zones. Zone A, commercial area, where the market condition works properly. Zone B, potential area, where there is some competitive, where A and B areas cover around 40% or 30,000 villages of the country. And Zone C and C plus rural and remote areas cover another 60% of the country or 40,000 villages. These are our usual target area where the charges of the services take place. There are 5 types of services we are providing. The first one is the village public Wi-Fi service. We provide 18,000 service points in 18,000 villages in the countryside, 1 access point per village. Second, we have 4,000 school locations for the school Wi-Fi with 1 to 5 computers for the small rural school. Third, we provide the Wi-Fi for the hospital for the small and rural one. We have around right now 180 locations across the country. The fourth one, we have 900 telecenters, which we call the usernet, a single floor building with the air conditioning, with 12 computers, one full-time ICT assistant during the office hours, and the office equipment and relevant, such as smart TV, printer, and fax. The last service we provide is that we call USORAP. We renovate the original classroom into the computer room with the same service conditions as the USONET, as the telecenter, 12 computers, one full-time ICT assistant, and also some office equipment. We have 1,500 locations. Right now, apparently, the key success or failure actually doesn't depend only on how well we organize our project on the geography, but also the external factor that we can control, like the natural disaster. We have 2 years to set up all equipment and get the service on across the country, a year longer than we expected. But finally, we already break through it, and right now, all units already on service. As there are in the countryside a lot of mountain, mostly we deploy the OFC network to ensure that the service stability and efficiency. But in some areas, we have to use and utilize the satellite in order to get the telecommunication services. And this brings me to the conclusion. Even though these days there are many service points across the country, but our user mission is still on. We need to encourage these people who live in the countryside to get familiar with the technology in order to get up-to-date information and adequate education, right on-time medical care and services, higher salary, income, and finally, to have them a better quality of life. For the next step, right now, Thailand Telecommunications Network and Service is active throughout the country. What we are planning to do next is to get as many government services and also private services and bringing them into rural people through the internet. For example, issuing the ID card from their villages so they don't have to get to the city, wasting a lot of time anymore. And hopefully, in the end, we will have everyone equally opportunities through the potential telecommunications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supri, for giving all the information with respect to the way that you have rolled out in the services. And it is really good to see that all the initiatives that you are taking and even rolling out these services, which will make these access networks more useful. So our next session is on terrestrial technologies. I would like to invite Dr. Waleed Matlauti, Head, Future Networks and Spectrum Management Division, International Telecommunication Union, to speak on the last mile internet connectivity. Dr. Waleed Matlauti received a PhD in optics, photonics, and lasers. He spent his early career at optical research laboratories in France, Italy, Canada, and the US with Intel, where he worked, among other things, on the first Raman silicon laser. In 2010, he joined AT&T Labs in California as a senior member of technical staff. In 2015, Dr. Walid joined Google headquarters in Mountain View as an optical network architect. He worked on building high-quality networks to provide broadband connectivity in emergent markets and connect the underconnected. Currently, he focuses on Google Global Data Center design to support cloud service deployments. Dr. Walid, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, esteemed colleagues. I'm really pleased and honored to be here this morning amongst you. As mentioned by Atsuko-san, our regional director for the ITU, we're not standing still at the ITU. We're trying to come up with several solutions to bridge the connectivity gap all around the developing countries and all around the globe as well. So my team is the infrastructure team. We mainly focus on innovative spectrum solutions, as well as network topologies and network designs to really come up with creative solutions to fix the connectivity challenge in the rural areas. If we could move on to the next slide, I'll share with you the background and the motivation of our last mile connectivity toolkit and the last mile connectivity solution guide that we developed internally. So the motivation, of course, is the fact that back in 2019, when we were thinking about the last mile connectivity challenge, almost half of the world population was not connected. Today, that number has improved a little bit, but we're still very far from having everyone connected. We're still at 2.9 billion short of having everyone connected in the globe. The challenge, one of the main challenges was that the telco and the traditional providers are often reluctant from extending the service to the rural areas because of the lack of incentives. The density, the population density, the return on investment is very slow. So usually they kind of shy away from going to the rural and the excluded areas. Consequently, there's almost no broadband infrastructure in these areas. There's usually the backbone is missing, but in most of these cases, it's the last mile infrastructure that is missing. And the scarcity of last mile network is the main reason why a huge chunk of the 2.9 billion are not connected today. This is really a very important challenge to solve because of the social and economic impact that it has to connect rural communities and offer healthcare, education, financial inclusion, etc. So we really wanted to focus on the last mile piece, trying to come up with a solution guide, trying to come up with best practices and design around innovative policy solution, innovative technology solution as well. Next slide, please. So we, as I mentioned, we developed a solution guide. It is available on our website. We can make it also available here in the webinar. You can access our guide. In the solution guide, we summarize the key challenges to address the connectivity gaps, as well as the key, and then we present the key technologies, policies, and business models to really tackle and bridge the gap in the rural area. And we also present case studies of successful rollouts of last mile connectivity projects and deployments. And then we're making this solution guide available. Next slide, please. So the way it works, we initially, if we could move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so the way it works is that we first identify an area and connected geography and served geography. We try to understand the background the challenges in mapping the access and the lack of adoption. And we tried to map key elements in terms of like network infrastructure assets, what is missing, what's there, what's not there. Then we move on to the step 2, where we try to identify in our solution database what kind of like technology solution we could bring, what kind of like policy intervention could help connect the rural areas. And then we move on to step 3, where we select the solution that could have most impact and that would be the most appropriate for that particular region. And we draw up a decision matrix for feasible solutions, and we adopt additional tools to assess like the impact of like the chosen solutions. And the step 4, we would move on to like the real implementation, to the deployment, to enabling the investment, and also like thinking about like the sustainability piece, the revenue model, how the business case would work, and how we can make this investment to cover this rural area a sustainable one by making the OPEX, by also thinking about a business case that would cover for the OPEX as well, the operating expenses. If we could move on to the next slide. So the components are as follows. Like, we first need to hit affordability, and affordability, our target is 2% of monthly GNI per capita for 1 gigabyte of mobile broadband data. We need to think about the usage, what kind of applications that we need to make available, and think about like the quality of service once we assess like the usage and we know how much data is needed per user accessing the different services. And then we move on to the financial viability, measuring the economic viability for private investment of the connectivity service. So based on the estimates of like the average revenue per user, the availability of backhaul middle mile connectivity, and the options for the different technological options for the different local access solutions, and the quality of service of those solutions. Then we move on to the structure. So we put in the structure of like the delivery of the service, and we design a business model around the different pieces. And then last but not least is we try to think about like the sustainability by designing clear revenue streams, but also like thinking about like innovative financing solutions. Thinking, for example, in my team recently about like leveraging cryptocurrencies and NFTs in trying to come up with like innovative financing for these solutions. Also like thinking about things out of the box, like special licensing, for example, for millimeter wave backhaul. Also like some policy and economical solutions, such as tax elevation, adoption of like new technology, etc., to think about like the sustainability piece. Next slide, please. So one of the options for policy interventions, for example, one of the things that we noticed could be very impactful is like improving market information and data resources to be able to make educated decisions and design and topologies and design and business case based on educated and based on real data coming from the ground. So sharing information such as network coverage, infrastructure assets, population density and income, grid electrification. If we have like these kind of data, then we can design a really best solutions that could be a perfect fit for the community and for the rural areas or for the villages. For example, a good example of that is the GSMA mobile coverage maps that are shared for different MNOs. Another example from Germany is the infrastructure atlas, where they're sharing like it's a central database for information and planning tool for broadband expansion in rural areas in Germany. It contains data from more than 1,500 network operators. There's many examples out there for like open data standards, share an open infrastructure to share like at least the information, so we can clearly identify the gaps, and we can clearly like take an educated guess on how to bridge and fill in these gaps. An example of like specific licensing solutions for rural areas, for example, Tanzania, the Tanzanian authority gave a test license for a micro MNO. So think about this like kind of like a community network. So it's a license for a community to build around coverage, to build coverage solutions for their own villages. So that could be a solution instead of having like a blanket licensing for like the big providers. So you could give one tier of like blanket license, but if they don't use it in certain villages, rural areas, then we can allow the community, we can give like regulation tools for the community to build and have licenses to build their own networks. So kind of like a use it or lose it kind of like a regime that could be very innovative in helping covering and getting last mile for the rural areas. Next slide, please. So the last slide here, it's summarizing like and giving like the links for the case studies database for the ITU, where we collected different successful rollout solutions and a database of like different interventions of like technology, last mile network topologies, as well as like regulation and policy solutions. We have also like available capacity development courses on last mile connectivity and the different options there on the ITU website, on the Future Networks and Spectrum Management Team page. You can find all this information in the slides. And an example of like a broadband calculator where we try to tackle different pieces of different steps of the last mile toolkit. So we start by assessing the at least the usage and the average revenue per user. We made that available on that link, connectschools.online, where it's a beta last mile calculation tool that is available, also made available by the ITU. And with that, give it over back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Walid. And I think it is really like useful, the information that you have shared with respect to the links of resources that can be used by agencies for this last mile connectivity. It is really needed. So now I invite Professor Radha Krishna Gandhi to speak on rural connectivity and TSDSI 5GI standard. Professor Radha Krishna Gandhi is an associate professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, Chennai, India. He was a postdoctoral researcher in the Wireless Networking and Communications Group at UT Austin from 2009 to 2011. He received the 2014 IEEE Stephen O. Rice Prize and the 2014 IEEE Leonard G. Abraham Prize and the 2015 IEEE Communications Society Young Author Best Paper Award. He was also awarded the 2016-17 Institute Research and Development Award, IRDA, by IIT Madras. Professor Gandhi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Just let me share my screen. I hope I'm audible and my screen is visible.
Yes, both of them.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak at this workshop. It's a very enlightening talks, the last few talks. So I want to share our experience from TSDSI on trying to bridge this rural connectivity. We have done a small exercise and we pushed a standard based on for rural connectivity. I want to share our thoughts and what we face going forward. So one thing before I start, I want to emphasize is that when we talk about rural connectivity, there are two things. One is providing basic connectivity, and second thing is making sure that the connectivity and the technology scale over time. Okay, so if you deploy something niche in rural, just because and that which is not mainstream, which is not globally accepted, then the cost of maintaining and upgrading the networks become extremely exorbitant. So with this particular goal in mind, we thought that the current technologies, we want to understand why the current technologies are not being deployed in rural areas. What is the bottleneck for this? And we are trying to get over this by trying to get into IT. So with that background, see what I mean. So among the many other things that ITU does, one of its main, from a technical perspective, one of its main work is to define what 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G standards are. Okay, it actually, ITU is the body that defines what gets into these particular standards, what makes these standards. For example, 3G was called IMT 2000, 4G was called IMT Advanced, and 5G was the IMT 2020. And these are developed every 10 years, almost close to 10 years. And ITU defines all the required KPI, key performance indicators for this particular standards. It does not define the technologies, but it defines the requirements for all the standards. Okay, so to define the requirements for the standards, ITU develops a certain kind of usage scenarios and test environments. Okay, so you see there are three main usage scenarios for 5G. One is called enhanced mobile broadband, massive mission type communication, URLs. So in EMBB, one of the test environments for which you test the technologies for a particular KPI is the rural EMBB, enhanced mobile broadband. Before we went to ITU, even in 4G, there are some configurations for rural EMBB. There are two configurations here. You can see config A and config B. Both are meant to understand, both are meant for rural connectivity. Config A is a 700 megahertz spectrum with an intersite distance of 1.732, and config B is the 4 gigahertz spectrum with an ISD of 1.73. But if you look at this closely, so these are the test environment for which they say that you have your spectral efficiency should be greater than this, you should be connected always, and so on and so forth. And all the technologies are tested against these specifications that ITU provides. So if you look at these two configurations, these are the rural connectivity configurations. You see that these speeds are 120 kilometers and 500 kilometers per hour. So effectively till 4G, till the end of 4G, even the ITU configurations were focused on high-speed vehicles passing through non-urban areas. These were not meant for rural broadband connectivity. Okay, these were meant for people in the cars to maintain their connectivity with the base station towers. Okay, so this is what was a little bit surprising, and we thought that okay, this should not be the case. ITU, specifically a global body, it needs technical specifications and technical requirements to incorporate the actual rural broadband KPI. Okay, so before we proceed further, I just want to highlight a few things from the rural Indian perspective. As Professor Uday Desai was pointing out, about 895 million people, 65% of Indian population, lives in rural areas. Sorry. In rural areas. Out of this, there are about 650,000 villages, out of which 250,000 villages are called the Gram Panchayat. So these 250,000 villages are the bigger villages. I mean, they form a cluster of villages. And what has done, the government of India has connected all these Gram Panchayats by an optical fiber. Okay, most of these Gram Panchayats have been connected with a humongous amount of money and fiber. The question is, we were looking at this question on how can we leverage this connectivity to provide rural broadband connectivity. Okay, so we want actual broadband connectivity and not for some high-speed interstate vehicles passing through the rural areas. So with this, we thought, so if we put so another, as I pointed out in the first parts of the talk, what we want to do is we want to use the existing technologies. Okay, we want, if it is 3G or 4G or 5G, whatever it is, whatever is there in the urban areas, we want to put the same thing in the rural areas. This is mainly so that the cost of development and everything becomes low, and the rural areas are integrated into the existing technology base. That's very, very important. So we said that if you put a tower at the Gram Panchayat, okay, what should be the coverage range of this tower so that all the neighboring villages are covered? Okay, so this is simple. This is a very obvious way of deploying the cellular systems so that the optical connectivity can be used. So we did a small study of understanding how much is the distance between Gram Panchayats and the neighboring villages. And this is a graph that shows some of the important, that highlights some of the important aspects. So on the x-axis is the distance, and the y-axis is the percentage of villages. So it says that if your base station is able to cover 4 kilometers range, then you'll be able to cover approximately 79% of the villages are covered. If you want to cover 95% of the villages with a base station at the Gram Panchayat, then you require a coverage radius of approximately 6 kilometers. Okay, so this is a study we have done in India. So what it says is that if your technology is such that it can cover longer distances, then a lot more villages can be covered by using a fewer base stations. Okay, this in some way reduces the ARPU, reduces the capex costs that are required to deploy these networks. And once the capex cost reduces, then the ARPU can be managed easily. Okay, so with this in mind, we started this study. We started pushing this in ITU. We said that we want to have a distance of 6 kilometers. It should cover a radius of 6 kilometers. And it's not about high-speed vehicles, very, very low mobility. You're talking about farm vehicles, you're talking about people moving. So 30 kilometers per hour, 33 and 30 kilometers per hour vehicular speed. So this was the genesis of the low mobility large cell. Low mobility stands for the slow speed, and large cell stands for the larger connectivity. So we actually went to ITU in 2016 and asked for a ISD of 12 kilometers, a radius of 6 kilometers. Finally, after a lot of negotiations with the companies and various countries, 6 kilometer ISD was accepted in ITU, half of what we started. This was a very, very good start, and it was very generous of ITU to help us out of this. So this was done with the help of TSDSI, the government of India, and academia. So essentially what this says is that any technology which is called as IMT 2020 technology, which is 5G, the mandatory requirement is it should serve a radius of 3 kilometers. So this itself was very huge improvement over 800 meters that are typically the cell serving radius of typical 4G. Okay, so for to do this, we also introduced new channel models which can also incorporate the larger ISD setup. Okay, so this was very good. So we introduced this KPI at ITU. So now the question is, what about the technology? Okay, the technology is not made by ITU. Technology is made by bodies like 3GPP, and 3GPP is the de facto cellular specification specification body. See, the focus of 5G was mainly about higher data rates, higher throughput, lower latency, which are very, very good for urban areas. But as I just showed you, coverage is also an important, very, very, very important metric. Unfortunately, this is not a very important, was not an important specification for 3GP at that point. Okay, so that was the reason why we said that ITU, it's important that ITU's mandates that this kind of larger coverage radiuses are important. So if you look at the connectivity, the main problem would be the uplink transmission from your handset. So we were also trying to develop technologies that we can incorporate in 3GPP so that it reaches a wide mass of people. That can provide newer waveforms that can reach a larger distance because of lower PAPI. So we tried this in 3GPP. Unfortunately, again, because of business interests and other things, this was things we did not go through at that point of time. So we decided that we would take the 3GPP 5G standard, add the required enhancements, Indian enhancements to provide larger coverage, and that is what we call as 5GI. So all the technical studies of this and all the administrative stuff of this have been taken care by TSDSI. So it's a new standard. The benefits are that it has good rural coverage. It's affordable in terms of implementation and other things, and it improves. Actually, it also provides a lot of urban area improvements in urban areas also because of NB-IoT and other changes that we have made. And the cost of deploying this is not too much. It's I mean, so we have just touched only the required parts of the 3GPP specification so that enhanced coverage can be possible. So the journey of 5GI was in 2019, we submitted to ITU the interim submission, and February and the end of 2019 was when we made the final submission. In 2020, we updated the submission to ITU, and in 2020, end of 2020 was when the evaluation of this particular technology was done by independent evaluation group, and 5GI passed all the required tests. So at that point, technically at end of 2020 was when 5GI was one of the IMD 2020 standards. In 2021, 5GI was considered as a national standard by Telecom DEC. And in 2022, I mean, after negotiations with 3GPP, and 3GPP was also very nice, welcoming enough to merge this 5GI into their 5G. So they absorbed this 5GI technology into 5G, thereby providing all the benefits of 5GI to 5G. Okay, so this was the journey of 5GI. But the question was, why did we do this 5GI? Okay, so rural connectivity is a serious problem. All of you have mentioned this. The main reason why the cellular systems that we have today in the urban areas do not get into rural is mainly because the ARPU, the revenue that you get out of the systems is very low in the rural areas. So the question is, can we develop technologies that are low cost as well as provide high data rates? Is this possible? Okay, for example, you're talking about massive MIMO solutions, 64 antennas, 128 antennas in the urban areas. These are expensive solutions that provides high data throughput. But there are technologies which we should invest in, which we should do research, and which we should standardize, which can provide similar kind of benefits for rural areas. Okay, so for example, some of the problems that has to be discussed and solutions come up with are better uplink. Maybe you talk about lower frequencies, provide lower frequencies at a lower cost to the rural areas. Okay, again, there's a policy issue. Effectively, economics play a very important role, and we should get this economics should become part of the technology development, and rural should be at the back of our mind. I mean, it should be in the forefront of the technology development and just not an afterthought. Once we finish the standard, everything we develop for urban areas, pushing that to rural becomes expensive. It's not a good way of proceeding forward. So what should we do at TSDSI, ITU, and 3GPP? We should have a fundamental look at rural connectivity. It should not be an afterthought. For example, LMLC should be updated in 6G in ITU. We should have more stringent specifications. It should be a continuous study item both in 3GPP and ITU, and lot of, I mean, it should get more academics. It should get more industry into its fold. And since I'm an academic, I say that academics should look at this problem seriously. We should understand why rural connectivity is an challenging problem. We should try to provide solutions to that. I mean, and this should we should have a homogeneous network across all the things. Of course, there will be few places where this is not possible. That's fine, but most of the rural should also use a similar technology like urban areas. Only then they'll be technologically, they will evolve with the urban areas, and the cost will be low. So with this, I want to conclude. Thank you.
So thank you, Professor Gandhi. And I think like you very well explained the genesis of LMLC and the requirements that what everyone should have in mind while designing technologies for the rural. So now I invite Dr. Mohammad Danesh, Chief Technology Officer, Trans-Celestial Technologies, to speak on solving civilization's long-term communication needs. Dr. Mohammad Danesh is the CTO and co-founder of Trans-Celestial, a startup delivering super-fast global internet distribution through its proprietary laser communications technology. Aside from a decade of experience in the field of electromagnetics and optics, Danesh holds a PhD in nanophotonics from the National University of Singapore. His research in graphene plasmonics enabled the manipulation of light and matter on a nanoscale level. He has also designed and built RF and microwave systems and advanced optical test and measurement apparatuses for A-Star Singapore, Sumitomo Electric Labs Japan, and Funsum Institute China. He has been published in more than 10 top photonics journals, including Nature. Dr. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. It's been a pleasure listening to all my fellow panelists today. discuss the problem of last mile connectivity, especially in rural areas. I'm just going to quickly share my screen with you. Can you see is my voice clear, and is my screen
Voice
being
is clear,
shared?
and yeah, both are visible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you everyone for the time today. At Trans-Celestial, our vision and objective is to solve the long-term connectivity problems that our civilization is going to face. There's around, as was mentioned today by my fellow panelists, there's still around 2.9 billion people that are not connected around the world. Out of these 2.9 billion people, nearly 2 billion of them are living within a 10-kilometer radius of a fiber optic cable. And this is what we all know as the last mile connectivity problem. At Trans-Celestial, our objective and vision is to help bring these people online, because we believe connectivity today is a basic human right. Traditionally, there's been a lot of challenges with the last mile connectivity part of our networks. In traditional cities where everything is planned and developed beforehand with time, things are easier to do because the infrastructure is put in place. However, when you go to more spontaneous environments, for example, like rural areas, you can see that a lot of considerations for infrastructure have not been provisioned yet. And for that reason, you need unique and novel technology solutions to help solve these problems. If you also take into consideration what has been happening in the last 2 years or so with the pandemic, you can see it's changed a lot the way that network connectivity is used globally. You can see there's been a lot of upgrades from copper lines to fiber optic lines, and there's been a huge amount of increase in global connectivity requirements. Everyone is working from home, and having a high bandwidth connection at your location where you live has become an essential day-to-day requirement for us to be able to continue with our work and our jobs and make an income. Amongst the other challenges that we are facing today, specifically with increasing our bandwidths, is the issues that we're facing with rolling out further 4G and 5G cell towers. You can see when we are thinking about expanding these new technologies, such as 5G, as we've been discussing today, a lot of them are not really fulfilling the key requirements that people are facing in rural areas. The cost of expanding these kind of technologies requires a nearly 10x investment in basic and core infrastructure, and require our cell towers to become even more dense. And for that reason, they are not the primary answer that we would need in such environments. Some of the top issues that people face in these areas, as was mentioned, are costs. You need to provide technology which basically gives access to affordable infrastructure in these areas. It reduces the overall OPEX costs, and you need to come up with standardization processes where approvals and administrative work can be done effectively in low amounts of time to bring this to the masses as fast as possible. Our solution to this problem has been what we call wireless fiber optics. We've been bringing the high bandwidth benefits that you have in your traditional fiber optic cables into the flexibility that you have in a wireless solution. And that's where we have come up with our first technology that we are currently mass producing and is commercially available, the Centauri. The Centauri is a point-to-point laser communication device that can send up to 10 gigabits per second fully duplex at distances as high as 3 kilometers, with availabilities as high as 4 to 5 nines, depending on the weather and rain zone that you are living in. This technology is a purely layer 1 technology, which is built to both work with synchronous and asynchronous telecommunication protocols. It is extremely easy to integrate into your standard telecom infrastructure. It is the size of a shoebox. It weighs less than 3 kilograms, and is extremely easy to integrate into various environments. It also uses 20 watts or less of overall power. So that allows it to be deployed in remote areas where you need something, where you don't have core power infrastructure, and you can use something like solar panels and batteries. Some other really interesting advantages that this form of technology has is that it does not require spectrum licensing in most countries around the world. So for that reason, it is very scalable and easy to develop and brings a very fast time to market for the end users. Laser communication technology is not something that was just recently invented. It's been around for at least 4 to 5 decades. What we've tried traditionally, there's been, however, two massive issues with the adoption of the technology. One, it has not been reliable enough, and two, it has not been at a commercially viable cost. These are the two problems that we've tried to solve with a new generation of this technology to make it as easy and as commercially viable as possible. The current Centauri device that we've built can be deployed within 1 to 4 hours. It has a fully automated AI-powered alignment and tracking procedure to stabilize the laser beam while the laser beam is running at what we call a diffraction limited beam width. The laser itself that's been propagating through the atmosphere has a beam divergence of around 1/100th of a degree. And that has brought us to build a state-of-the-art pointing and tracking and laser stabilization system that works with accuracies within 1/1000th of a degree in real time to maintain the stability and performance of this link. And that's what's allowed us to build a much more reliable version of this technology. To make it easy to use, we've added a lot of software and telemetry on the top, where, as we can see in my slide, you have a fully guided installation process to make the installation very easy, because with such a precise device, you cannot expect someone who's climbing a tower to make that kind of precise alignment. So that's fully guided through a software tool, and we've added a lot of other pieces of software to help monitor the performance of the laser communication device as well, to make it as easy to use and easy to deploy as possible. Usually when you talk about laser communication technology, the #1 concern that comes up is how will it work in different weather environments? Luckily, we've been able to test this technology for over 2 years now in Southeast Asia. And during the time that we've been testing it in a few different countries, we've also gone through a few different typhoons with extremely high rain rates above 100 millimeters per hour and extremely high wind speeds that cause a lot of vibrations on your cell towers as well. And we have been able to prove that this technology, when deployed within the correct environment and the correct site and installation procedures, can still provide 4 to 5 9 reliabilities, even in these very difficult and challenging environments. I would like to now, I think it will be interesting to now jump into some example use cases of where we have deployed this technology and how it could potentially be applied in other places as well. So one of the major use cases that we see where laser communication technology has been quite interesting in helping deployments is in ISPs, specifically wireless ISPs, and building specifically the access backbone, either in a front haul or a backhaul situation. And here you can see some examples of architectures where you're building a ring access backbone with the Centauri technology, where you can, from each of the access point, you can basically extract another connection to your end users. And you can see another example here where you can basically use both this form of laser communication technology with RF technology and fiber optic cables together in a complementary situation and environment. And I think that's something that has been brought up a few times today, that the connectivity gap that we're facing today is such a big problem that it requires a lot of diverse and different technologies to help address different parts of this problem. And that's what we believe this point-to-point laser communication technology really brings to the table. Another technology solution as part of the toolkit of solutions that we have to address unique problems. So one of the example places that we've been deploying this is in with an ISP in Malaysia. This is in a suburban environment where fiber optic cables were not accessible to any of the users in those buildings. Fiber was extremely costly and time consuming to deploy in these environments. The expected availability for the network was 99% or above. The ISP that we're working with, they tried to deploy a RF solution in that environment, and they were facing a lot of issues due to spectrum congestion and interference. And for those reasons, they were not able to get the kind of bandwidth they required. So we very quickly helped them deploy this laser communication technology to help connect the buildings together. They were able to, within a matter of a few days, upgrade their links from hundreds of megabits per second to 10 gigabits per second connectivity in between these buildings. And the user experience has been quite delightful, where users have been able, with a similar cost that they've been having in the past, get around 10 to 100x higher bandwidths in their homes. So this has been one of the example deployments that we've done, and the experience has been very positive. Most of these links were between 1 to 2.5 kilometers in distances. Another use case that we've been deploying in the region has been with mobile operators. This is for in locations where 4G, 3G connectivity is still not available. So it's basically part of their expansion plans. This laser communication technology can, because it's a layer 1 technology, it can be used both in the front haul part of the network architecture and also in the backhaul part of the architecture as well. One of the example case studies is with one of the major mobile operators in the Philippines, where our team went to a very remote location on an island, where basically there was no basic 3G, 4G connectivity, and we did, and with this laser communication technology, we were basically helping expand 3G, 4G connectivity to some of these locations within 1 to 2 kilometers of distances. The required link availability in these locations was 4 nines and above, and we were required to provide high bandwidth backhaul to the microcell towers. In some of these areas, there was no electricity, there was no grid electricity available, so the sites were running on generator-based electricity. So it was a very challenging environment. And luckily, due to the very small size and weight and power requirements of the Centauri technology that we've built, we were able to provide 10 gigabit per second backhaul links to these microcell towers and help with bringing that connectivity to that region. And we're now further expanding those plans in the Philippines as well. So these are some of the 2 examples that we've been working with in the region in Southeast Asia. And I believe the same technology can also be expanded to also help with bringing connectivity in specific locations in the rural areas as well, especially when high bandwidth is needed with a solution that is very easy and fast to deploy and requires very quick turnaround times, and where spectrum licensing and regulations could be a challenge. As part of our ambitions to help bring people online, we are also currently developing our next generation of laser communication technology, which will be a satellite-based solution. I thought it would be just interesting to point that out, that we are also planning to expand this technology that we've built for terrestrial applications, for space applications as well, that will act as basically similar to bringing a fiber optic cable to connect a village or an island or another location, which is very far from a network and has no accessibility to a point of presence of a fiber nearby. And finally, I would like to thank you all for the time today. And if anyone in the audience who's interested in bringing new technology into bridging the digital divide that we face today, that's what we are all about. Please feel free to contact us and we can talk more about this. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Danish. And I think it was very interesting to hear your talk, and like seeing the less time it takes to bring up the links, it is definitely a very viable solution for the rural as well. So now we would open the floor for questions. And we have some questions. We will first take questions for for Professor Gandhi. So the question is like, how is rural connectivity different from private network? Professor Gandhi?
Uh, Thank you. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Ma'am?
you're audible. Yeah, you're audible.
Private networks are different because private networks are generally currently being deployed in industries as well as in small hometowns, small townhomes, where the same operator provides you the spectrum as well as the equipment, except that you run all your data is in your own network, and you have certain QoS requirements. Whereas the problem of rural connectivity is something completely different. The problem of rural connectivity is how you connect your base station to the backbone network. Okay, how many base stations should you place in your network? The cost also plays a very critical role. Unlike private networks where cost is not such a critical issue. I hope that answers this question.
Yeah, I think you have answered it well. Like, it is not just like giving it to a limited set of people, it is providing it to a mass. So like we have to see from the transport to the access part of it. So it is,
Yes.
yeah. So Chan, any other questions for the professors?
Yes, so there is one question in the chat for Professor Gandhi about wouldn't one visualize rural connectivity similar to a private network at the last mile? So Professor Gandhi, I believe that question is for you.
Wouldn't one visualize rural connectivity similar to private network at last mile? Again, see, it's similar, but saying that question is, a private network is also similar to an urban network, except that it is isolated to your office or to your working place or something. Okay, whereas the challenge in rural is, for example, a private network can work with 5 base stations. You can put 5 base stations, okay, in your private network. Whereas in rural, putting 5 base stations is a complete no-go in most villages because you don't get the revenue back. Whereas in private network, you'll be able to pay. So it's a combination of economics and technology. It just connecting. I mean, if we're just providing long-range connectivity, if it's providing, I mean, we know how to cover, we know how to deploy cellular networks. We can deploy them anywhere as long as it is economically feasible. That is where the whole crux is. It's not economically feasible to deploy this kind of networks in rural areas.
Thank you very much, Professor Gandhi, for your answer to the question. There are now 2 questions in the chat for Dr. Dinesh. The first question is, what about safety concerns for birds and possibly for humans in using a laser-based technology? And the second question is, how do you compare the reliability of your laser solution and conventional microwave solutions?
Thank you, Kelvin. Both are really good questions. I'm very happy to address. Let's start with the safety part. Our devices all comply to the standard safety requirements for any other laser technology, which are set by the IEC. I promise you, if there's any birds or any humans walking close or around our laser device, they will not be harmed, they will not be burned. And just to give you some exact numbers, the amount of laser power that we're sending out of the devices are in the order of milliwatts. And they are and a laser spectrum is similar to sunlight, and the overall power that these devices are sending is orders of magnitude less than the radiation that we're facing every day from just being in the sunlight as well. So from a safety point of view, they're quite safe. There's a lot of standards around it, and we comply to those standards. When we're comparing with microwave technology, it depends what wavelengths we're comparing with. If we're talking about anything in from 10 gigahertz and below, they are definitely more robust when it comes to weather effects, anything in the order of a few gigahertz to 10 gigahertz. However, they're very limited in spectrum, and we cannot send beyond a few hundred megabits per second on these frequencies because of the small spectrum bandwidths that are available. When it comes to the higher frequency ranges, and I'm specifically talking about millimeter wave, things like E-band technology, when it comes to rain fade and rain performance in rainy environments, laser communication technologies, specifically in the wavelengths that we're using, which is 1550 nanometers, have a bit of an edge. The overall loss per kilometer is a few dBs less with a laser communication technology. And when it comes to other weather effects like fog, foggy environments, the millimeter wave and E-band technologies perform better. And that's why it's really important to look where you're deploying this technology and find the right solution or the right combination of them to be able to fulfill the requirements when it comes to reliability for your links.
Any
Thank you
more
very much.
questions, Calvin?
Yes, so there are a few more questions in the chat in there, but I think in the interest of time, perhaps it may be good to answer them over chat, noting that we are running out of time for this session.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Mohammed Danish. Thank you, Professor Gandhi. Thank you for the time, and thank you, Calvin. So now I would like to officially close this session and move straight to the next session on non-terrestrial technologies. So our next session is on non-terrestrial technologies, and I would like to invite Mr. Gaurav Kharot, Managing Sales Director, India and South Asia, Intelsat, to speak on satellites for disaster recovery, Tonga, a case study. Mr. Gaurav Kharot, currently Managing Sales Director for South Asia, including India at Intelsat, has been a satellite professional with 20 plus years in satellite communications and satellite broadcast. He has been with Intelsat for 10 plus years, expanding their presence in the region and also developing strategies to enter into new segments. Gaurav has a background in creating satellite solutions in the enterprise and media markets, and lately having a foray in the maritime and in-flight connectivity markets. Mr. Gaurav, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charumati madam. I hope I'm audible.
You're audible. You're audible, and your presentation is also there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I am cognizant of the time, and I promised the organizers, ITU and TSDSI, that I will try and complete my presentation on time. So I'm going to be a little bit quick on a few slides, but then spend some more time on the relevant ones. First and foremost, I must thank you for the opportunity to participate in this digital technology innovation series with a focus on case studies from India and APAC region. I thank ITU and TSDSI to give Intelsat the opportunity to present this case study around Tonga. I'll quickly give you a brief on Intelsat. I don't have slides on that. We are a global organization providing space and SATCOM-based solutions for many sectors. Starting from 1965, we launched the world's first commercial satellite, and our 60th birthday is not far away. Today, we have 52 geostationary satellites covering 99% of the world's population, 99% of the world's geography. We carry several thousand TV channels, reach billions of eyeballs, address mobile network operators, 8 of the 10 largest globally, and so on and so forth. So we do have a long history of Intelsat being in this field, but sometimes what happens is the long history is generally focused on the commercial aspects and doesn't focus on the humanitarian aid and disaster relief part of the applications that we do. We don't talk enough about it, and so I'm excited to be on this panel to share our Tonga experience. Can we go to the next slide, please? We will focus on the Tonga volcano and the use of satellites for disaster relief during such emergencies. For that, we need to know a little bit more about Tonga, its geography, where is it located, the effects of what happened, and how satellite enabled disaster relief. But at the same time, we faced key challenges out of which there was some learning. So, if you can move on, I will tell you where exactly Tonga is on the world map. It's to the east of Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji, right in the Pacific Islands. A blow up of that and a further blow up of that right in the middle of an area where there is not much of landmass available. So this is a group of small islands in an archipelago. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about the magnitude of the volcano here. As you can see, there was a first eruption that occurred in Tonga, in the Hunga Hapai island, 65 kilometers north of the capital island, which is Tonga Tapu. This further led to a very large and powerful explosion on the 15th of January 2022. So it was just early part of this year. The Tonga volcano eruption devastated Tonga. It lasted just 11 hours, but from the scientific studies that are going on this, it may take years for scientists and volcanology to work out exactly what happened during this cataclysmic explosion. NASA determined that this eruption was probably hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bomb. Current data indicates that this was the largest volcano in the 21st century, and it was the largest since 1991 when Mount Pinatubo in Philippines occurred. Let me tell you a little bit about the outcome of this eruption. So the volcanic eruption sent a plume of ash soaring into the upper atmosphere to a height of at least 30 kilometers, well into the upper atmosphere or stratosphere. It triggered pressure waves, gravity waves in the atmosphere, and tsunami waves across the Pacific Ocean. The GPS satellites also detected disturbances in the ionosphere, which is at the height of 80 to 90 kilometers. So the explosion had massive ramifications. It triggered a tsunami. So if you see the circle on the map, the concentric waves out of that tsunami reached all the different coastal regions, right up to Russia in the north, or the US, or in the east, right up to Peru. And there were deaths in Peru and a few deaths in Tonga as well. Can we just bring in the animation? I want to quickly talk about the history of the island nation. So can you just click? Yeah. So it is relevant to know the history of Tonga. They have about 100,000 people. 70% of them reside in the main island. And then there are 36 islands, smaller islands, which are inhabited with the remaining 30% of the population. So this is not a very populated country. But I think one important factor is that ever since the 1918-1920 Spanish flu pandemic, Tonga lost about 8 to 10% of their population to that flu, because of which the country has a no-touch policy. And even today, the Tongans are very, very cautious when they go meet an outsider. They prefer not to touch, not to shake hands, not to meet people very closely. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm just having some before and after pictures to tell the story of how devastating this explosion was. You can see there are two kinds of imagery here. One is the volcanic ash, which is coming down and then covering the whole island and the residential areas and the commercial areas in this island. The second is of the tsunami water. So the tsunami water gushed into some of these islands, drowning out people there, drowning out civilization there, and invading into residential and commercial property. So I'll quickly, if you can bring in the next few clicks, we'll just go through some of the pictures. And on the next slide, we've got more of the same, but effectively this shows how bad the volcanic ash was covering the whole region, which did not allow communication equipment to even work properly. Even today, after 5 weeks of restoring the communication links, can we please keep on clicking to the next slide? Even today, the Tongans are still trying to clear away the thick ash layer of ash that has blanketed everything in their households, including trying to get clean water and supplies and restore their crop damage. So I'll not go through the slide in great detail, but I'll quickly sum up the explosion effect. So the explosion effect was that Tonga was connected to Fiji through a 827-kilometer fiber cable undersea, which was set up in 2013 under the aegis of Asian Development Bank and World Bank. That got severed. The cable no longer existed because of this. There was a domestic section of the cable linking the main island, Tonga Tapu, and the other islands, which was also cut. The disruption caused severe outage in communication. Obviously, Tonga could not communicate to the rest of the world. Of course, there was some communication within the islands, which was domestic. But broadly put, international networks were disrupted. Local networks were flooded by the tsunami. The downtime was effectively for a 5-week period. It took 5 weeks to restore, to send a repairs vessel, which do undersea cable repairs to the site, and undig the cable, which was covered with layers of magma on the seafloor, and restore the service by 21st of February. So 15th January till 21st February, Tonga was out, dark. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I just want to mention why. I'll dwell a little bit on this slide. Why is communications important during such disasters? And it's common sense, but I just want to reiterate. The quicker you establish communications, the quicker you have information as to where help is needed, the more effective your humanitarian aid is. So supply of food, medicines, clean water, sanitation, health workers or health-related people can all be planned and executed better if there is communication available directly from the ground and the affected areas. Execution of these supplies also, and especially in the case of Tonga, could have been more disastrous without the support of communication, because there could be aftershocks, repeated eruptions, and this could be true for a volcano or for an earthquake as well. So Intelsat has a long history of lending support to first responders and humanitarian organizations during times of crisis like this. Intelsat is also a signatory to the UN ITU Crisis Connectivity Charter, which sets out a process to accelerate access to satellite-based communications when local networks are affected after a disaster like this. So we got in touch with the ITU regional office in Pacific. We collaborated with them. We identified the key agencies involved. We had a mobile operator called Vanton. We had a telco from New Zealand, Spark, and we had the ministry from Tonga, the MIDCC. This ministry was meant for disaster recovery and ecology, etc. We started operationalizing the KU band satellite connectivity through a terminal at their international airport. I think that was the first move, so that supplies from foreign countries like New Zealand, Australia could reach the location safely and securely. We also provided data connectivity services to Tonga Meteorological Services. Now, on the right side of the page, I'm talking about how we worked with other partners in the region. Now, Tonga and the Tongan mobile operators, the cable operators, the Tongan communications corporations, they were all left with no communication. So the foreign players like Telstra and Spark, Telstra from Australia, Spark from New Zealand, the New Zealand Defence Forces, Optus from Australia, all of these private enterprises got together and we worked with them diligently to provide restoral services, including Speedcast. We have a network out of New Zealand based on iDirect technology. We have a network with Telstra, which is the platform as a service based on new tech technology. All of these were deployed into Tonga almost immediately. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, this is a unique case study because here we did not have to do anything. We just had to ramp up the capacity available on an existing network, which by God's grace did not suffer an outage. So while for 5 weeks the Tongan citizen was seemingly cut off from the outside world, there was one University of South Pacific, which had a VSAT network connecting to 14 other locations in the South Pacific, and that was up and running. This was the only network available to communicate with the outside world in the initial 48 hours. When we did try to restore services, but I'll come to how there were challenges in doing that. So this was the only network that did not really go down. All other satellite phone connections, everything else could not penetrate the volcanic ash cloud, which used to come down every day. Thankfully, what happened was the university opened the doors for citizens, and they further helped the government of Tonga in dispatching another spare KU antenna, KU terminal that they had, KU band, from its campus, and tried to help the government in restoring services. The common citizen, and you can see the people queuing up. Now, this may not seem like a big queue from an Indian perspective, but by going by the islands and the population in each of these islands, that itself is a big queue in a Tonga island. 8.9 terabytes of data was delivered in a month on this network for common people to go and post their updates on Facebook and other social media applications. Can we go to the next slide, please? So there are challenges that we had to deal with, and there were learnings. So the first challenge, instead of going through the bullets, I'll go through what we went through. So we activated, at the Intelsat, we activated the capacity on our satellites, 2 of them, within the first 24 hours. But the time to start communications was more than 48 hours. So what went wrong? And we'll come to that. The New Zealand government, the Australian government shipped immediate relief supplies, including SATCOM terminals. So the terminals that I talked about in the previous slide, they were put on Hercules planes right away, along with other supplies. We therefore had remote terminals delivered on the tarmac in Tonga at the airport. But there were no engineers to install it. There were no people ready to take those terminals and install it on the ground. While all of this was being sorted out, there was volcanic ash that kept coming down, as I mentioned in the previous day. Equipment that exists in a country like Tonga, and this was one of the challenges there, may not have been used for a long time. And once it has not been used, it is not maintained properly, it's of little relevance, little use in an emergency. So they had equipment on the ground, old equipment, different manufacturers, did not seamlessly fit into any of the new networks. So what are the learnings? I think there are 3-4 key learnings. I'll keep it short. Keep the SATCOM terminal alive in locations and areas which are prone to disasters. Fiber and terrestrial technology, the primary means of communication, needs a backup. So the backup has to be maintained and kept alive, and that's what I mean by saying that a heartbeat satellite connectivity could go a long way in averting such disasters. The second one, plan for disasters. Okay, it's a big challenge to convince organizations and governments to plan for disaster, but then we must take a leaf out of some of the countries who do this. Japan is a great example, and all their mobile operators like SoftBank, KDDI, they all have a disaster recovery network available. I would say governments across countries which are prone to the disasters, they need to also mandate that telcos have a DR network in place. I think the Indian government, just to correlate the two, have done a great effort in creating the NDMA and the NDRF. But I would still welcome more that can be done on the NDRF sides and create networks which can be easily deployed and can be used for such disaster management. One last topic there, the new satellite technology should make terminals easy to deploy and transport and operate. And I'll touch upon that in the last slide. Can we go to the last slide, please? So disaster kill at least 1 million people each decade, leave hundreds of millions more homeless. I have some statistics from the year 2016 and 17. More than 300 million people around the world were directly affected by natural catastrophes. Satellites are immune to natural disasters. As I said, satellites can cover up to 99% of this Earth. Wherever there's an event, there's a chance of satellite being able to support that emergency. Today, satellites can be redirected to where capacities needed are very flexible. Solutions can be deployed immediately, regardless of the constraints of geography. Satellites are not susceptible to breakage or events on the ground as they are located thousands of kilometers away from the Earth. Anything that is on the ground, and this includes terrestrial fiber, microwave towers, which is infrastructure on the Earth, are susceptible to calamities. And we must plan for this. Satellite is ubiquitous and quick to deploy. Once you have the equipment on the ground, it is only a matter of pointing the terminal antenna and turning on the capacity to get broadband communications. Can we just populate the slide one last click? To simply put, in disaster and emergency situations, satellites save lives. And I'll go to the last slide. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am here to take questions, but I'll just say one last thing, because this session is around non-terrestrial technologies, so that everyone is aware. Satellite is now becoming a part of the 3GPP version 16, version 17 specifications, and it will soon. I did not mention it, but some of the new modems some of the new technologies on satellite networks on the ground are now going to be 5G compliant, with even with newer advancements like network function virtualization, etc. And it will become more central to a 5G network in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaurav. And I feel it is the use cases like the Tonga which demonstrates how satellite communication can be the solution in case of disasters. And the learnings which you have presented, they are really the key takeaways. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So now I invite Ms. Neha Satak, founder and CEO, Astrom Technologies Private Limited, to speak on Startup Showcase. Ms. Neha Satak is a serial entrepreneur with over 15 plus years of experience. She holds a PhD from Texas A&M University and a master's in aerospace engineering from the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Post her PhD, she worked as a postdoctoral research associate at University of Florida in association with the Air Force Research Lab USA. She is the recipient of a number of awards and grants, including the Amelia Earhart Fellowship and WEQ Fellow. She is also one of 2 Indian women to win the prestigious Karman Fellowship for Space Tech Innovators this year. Ms. Neha, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Charumati. I hope you all are able to hear me. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So very glad to be here today, among this prestigious, group of people. So thank you so much for inviting us. My company Astrom is basically a deep tech startup doing innovative work in terms of, developing technologies which can help bring together the non-terrestrial and the terrestrial, networks in one place. So with that, I'll just start my presentation. So my presentation today will be about innovative technologies for the next generation of satellite communication, because the topic of this particular session is non-terrestrial technologies, and we will highlight what Astrom as a company is doing in that domain. So next slide, please. Yes. So I think I'm sure everyone is well aware of the large demand for data, but one of the important things that I wanted to highlight today was that the data will be required not just in the conventional places of consumption, for example, urban areas, but also in rural areas, suburban areas, smart cities, and there are more and more new applications which are coming up, like autonomous cars. There is a lot of requirement for capacity to be utilized, for smart city infrastructure, for also maritime applications where everything is going digital. Traditionally this industry had a lot of gap when it came to making things smart, but now that industry is moving at a very, very rapid pace to become fully digitized. And of course, last but not least, this is something that relates to all of us, that in-flight connectivity is something that we all want, as citizens of the world, traveling around all around the world. So in short, the capacity demand is there in various parts of the world. It's not just limited to certain segments. And that is primarily the reason why we think that terrestrial and non-terrestrial technologies have to come together. And Mr. Gaurav actually at the end of his presentation alluded to this, that the 3GPP release, the next release is going to bring together satellite networks with the 5G networks, and that's kind of the big push which is going to make all of these applications possible. So that's kind of what we see also as the vision. Could we please go to the next slide? To fulfill that vision, of course, fiber alone is not enough. Fiber has limited reach. All of us have experienced that over the many last few decades. Next slide, please. Satellite connectivity is still expensive. Of course, there are a lot of initiatives being taken. First of all, initiatives to reduce the geo connectivity cost, but also the upcoming LEO and MEO constellations, which are going to bring down the cost in a big way. But as it stands today, the satellite connectivity is still expensive, and it needs reform to bring down the cost and make it viable for all of these applications that we discussed in the last few slides. So next slide, please. Astrom, my company Astrom, our vision is, to develop innovative technology to fulfill this vision of high bandwidth, low cost connectivity across land, air, and ocean possible. And so that's kind of what we are focused on as a company, and we are fulfilling that by the innovative products that we launch in the market. Next slide, please. So just to give you, a quick overview of our products. The first product that we have launched is called Giga Mesh. It is the world's first multi-beam E-band radio, and this is kind of a product which strengthens the already existing networks, the terrestrial networks, be it 4G, 5G, or rural broadband, by providing wireless backhaul capacity. And the second product in our portfolio is called Gigastat, which is a ground terminal, which is a mobility-based ground terminal, which can be used with geostationary satellites for providing connectivity to for mobility applications such as ships and airlines. And of course, the future version of this product will also be very much relevant for LEO and MEO constellations, which require constant tracking of satellites. Next slide, please. So just to delve a little bit deeper into the first product that we have launched into the market. So our strategy has always been that terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks both need to come together and both need to evolve in order to fulfill the demand. So with this product, we are actually filling the gap of the gap that is existing in the last mile infrastructure, where fiber is present at certain locations, but the capacity of fiber is not utilized fully because of the lack of wireless technologies for the last mile. And so this is basically the world's first multi-beam E-band radio. And why that is important is because it is the most powerful E-band radio which can distribute fiber capacity in multiple directions simultaneously. It can basically do the job of multiple point-to-point E-band radios with one single radio, and it is effective in delivering fiber-like capacities in the rural areas for rural broadband infrastructure, and also in the future for 5G front haul, mid haul, and backhaul applications. Next slide, please. So how we use that product is we wirelessly connect existing fiber network in the cities to rural and suburban areas so that we can actually utilize the fiber capacity more effectively to provide connectivity to areas which are close to places where fiber exists. Next slide, please. The second product, which is called Gigastat, it is a flat panel, satellite terminal. It has electronic steering capabilities, which is required for geo mobility applications. To have reliable connectivity on ships, vehicles, and airplanes. The future version of this product will also be able to electronically track satellites for LEO and MEO applications. Our objective is to also put all of the learnings that we have from Giga Mesh into the Gigastat to make it possible for this product to also seamlessly integrate with telecom towers to provide backhaul connectivity, and that's kind of the main push that we want to bring into this product. So basically, this product also has all of the proprietary algorithms and technology that we bring, with our innovative beam forming and beam steering algorithms. This terminal today operates in Ku and C band, and we are soon going to also offer this in Ka band. So next slide, please. So with this, brief overview of the products, I also wanted to talk about, the evolution of the satellite networks. Of course, all of this information is probably, very much known to us, but just to put it all together, there is an evolution of, satellite networks going from GEO to MEO and LEO. Of course, all of these three orbits bring certain advantages and certain disadvantages when it comes to coverage and latency. But what is seen most common is that all of these three orbits, the technology is evolving year by year, and we are having a newer and newer technology, basically reducing the cost and increasing the capacity. So that's kind of the evolution of the satellite networks. But what is also more important, which is what I have on the next slide. Next slide, please. Is also how the frequency that is being utilized in these satellite networks is evolving. So if you look at the frequency spectrum utilization, it started all the way from lower frequency bands like S band, going up till Ku and Ka band, which is what is most being utilized right now. But all of the constellations are today limited to till Ka band. But what is coming up is actually the higher frequency bands, which are V and W band, which are going to be the next generation of SATCOM networks. And one may ask that why this evolution from GEO to LEO and MEO. So just to say the obvious, but say it once again, is that first of all, it offers low latency, the LEO and MEO orbits, and of course, more capacity per unit area, because denser beams, spot beams can be packed when one goes to MEO and LEO. And the second point is why higher frequencies. Of course, very obvious, just like the terrestrial networks have been evolving to higher and higher frequency, satellite networks will also evolve to higher and higher frequencies to use the unused spectrum, and also to have tighter spot beams with smaller antennas, basically giving more and more coverage, more capacity per unit area. So that is kind of a trend to look at, which is the evolution of utilization of Q, V, and W band spectrum in the SATCOM domain. So next slide, please. And so what as a company we are doing is we are also evolving with this with this trend, and our expertise in flat panel satellite antenna terminal, as well as on W band technologies for terrestrial networks. We are bringing all of those together, and we are going to bring out products in W band, W band, both on satellite payload domains and as well as user terminal domain. So we think that W band is sort of a very important band for the future of SATCOM, and Astrom is getting prepared to bring in products in these domains, combining all of the expertise we have actually accumulated over the last two products that we've launched in. We have launched and are launching in the market. And then, of course, the third set of products that our upcoming products for our company are also inter-satellite payloads in V band. This is again very important because the future constellations have to be tier 1 in order for them to facilitate the kind of application that we are talking about, in a more holistic manner. And so inter-satellite communication will also be a very critical piece in the coming future, which we will cater with our technologies. Next slide, please. So what we offer today to satellite operators, apart from the products that we've launched in the market, is basically a full support, end-to-end support of starting from basically designing your constellation, be it LEO or MEO constellation, doing the ITU filing, doing the test satellites, demonstration satellites, doing a full network design, all the way to putting the whole constellation together. And that's kind of the expertise that we have developed over the last 7 years, to bring all of these aspects together to make a successful constellation. And I would say that the trend today is that there is a lot of partnerships happening in this domain. Satellite operators and also telecom operators are all coming together, which is a very good sign for terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks to sort of come together and build a network which is sustainable as well as which works together well. So that's kind of where I would like to end my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neha. I think it was really interesting to see that how from the E-band portfolio, you are now expanding into the satellite segment. And especially the last slide wherein you explained that you are giving the complete offering to the operator. I think that is really like your expertise is definitely going to help them. So thanks a lot. So
Thank you so
now
much.
I invite Dr. Pankaj Kumar Dalila, Director CDOT, to speak on CDOT initiatives. Dr. Pankaj Kumar Dalila holds PhD and MTech degree in microwave engineering from IIT BHU Varanasi, India in 2008 and 1996. He's employed with CDOT since August 1996 and presently holds post of director at CDOT Delhi. His research interests are in the area of ICT in disaster management, IoT, telecom network planning, design of geointelligence algorithms for different ITUT engines, and mobile radio channel characterization. Dr. Dalila received URSI Young Scientist Award in 2005, Aegis Graham Bell Award for Innovative Managed Services in 2016, and Elsina Award of Excellence in 2017, respectively. He has published more than 50 research papers in different national, international conferences and peer-reviewed reputed journals, example IEEE, Springer Annals. He has 5 patents granted from US, UK, Canada, China, and India. Dr. Dalila, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Am I audible? Thank you.
You are audible.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much, organizers, for providing this opportunity to CDOT. I will speak on behalf of CDOT, what is our first-hand experience for non-terrestrial communication, especially for rural and remote areas. So a little bit of background, first slide, please. Little bit of background, if I will provide you, that is rural areas or remote areas in developing country, for example, in India, it is quite different, as has been told by previous speakers also, than our urban areas, especially the type of infrastructures which is there in terms of power, space, manning, that is the people who is maintaining. Recently, I have visited Akola, Maharashtra district of this India, where CDOT has installed this non-terrestrial PM1E solutions. There we saw that our system is installed in an exchange where no manpower is there. When power is going, generator is there, but no diesel is there. So it is not getting on. So our system is getting rebooted multiple times in a day. When it comes to internet connectivity, backhaul connectivity, we have taken a backhaul. The backhaul cost in India or in any developing country is very high. It is beyond the reach of poor men, especially the rural people in India, in developing countries. If I take the example of India, it is 70 lakhs rupees for 100 Mbps for 1 year, which is very high. And if you see its revenue generation, the business model, there is no comparison. Absolutely no business model, we can say. Right from start of 2G to 3G to 4G, you see penetration is mostly lying by these telecom operators in urban areas or in niche rural areas where people are able to afford that. But for common people, it is not the case. So even we are not able to utilize the full potential of 3G or 4G. Now we are entering into era of 5G. So government is very serious. So this time rather to spoon feed our villagers or people, government policy is inclined to make our own countrymen or developing countries people participative in rollout of this technology. PM1E is one of the example of that, which is we have developed that based on this government guidelines. And then CDOT recently have completed the field trial with TCS in BSNL network 4G, our 4G core, and we are also working in 5G. Similarly, our optical portfolio, as it has been discussed, that BharatNet BBNL 2.5 lakh gram panchayat targets was there, but I am sorry to inform, because CDOT provided this technology to these gram panchayats. It is based on CDOT technology, GPON technology, CDOT NMS, and we are maintaining them. That NOC is also maintained by CDOT, but more than 40% of these gram panchayats are down because of fiber cut. Similarly, when we roll out this our PM1 solutions, I need not to explain, I will come to the slide that what PM1 is or what 4G, 5G and what other terrestrial technologies are. But these problems means OPEX, SLAs. It is very difficult to maintain that in rural areas or remote areas. So now I will just, and another thing, in a country like India, where every 26 kilometers language or your culture changes. 26 official languages are there in whole of India. So simply pushing English or Hindi doesn't work. So similarly, government policies, we are, when providing our technologies, we are also providing the use cases for local people in their regional languages. So next slide, please. I will explain how we are doing that. So here it is Prime Minister Wi-Fi Access Network, which is again designed by CDOT. It's central registry primarily, because central registry part has been allocated to CDOT. And just I want to mention, in today's scenario globally, security, physical security as well as cyber security is very important. So whenever you are designing any technology, you just can't ignore the security part. So here in this PM1 framework, we are maintaining this security part also. We are doing KYC of individual subscriber, but in a very, very user-friendly way. No paperwork is required, nothing. And what we are doing is providing internet access through Wi-Fi or through some other non-terrestrial means. We have simply unbundled this approach by leveraging it in form of like a public data office, like previously PCO was there, public call center was there, then PDOA, public data office aggregator, app provider. So anybody can come, any villager, any stationery shop or any chai wala can come, tea hawkers, coffee shop person can come, and he can become the PDO, he can become PDOA as well. But there are different requirements. Once we rolled out this solution, we find certain drawbacks, why it is the user friendliness, why it is not being penetrated. We have taken interview, we have hired some professional agencies also, how to make these technologies to penetrate in India. The technology is being, we have enough technology, like Mahatma Gandhi told once, we have enough to feed whole of the population in the world, but we need to convert the use cases of technology. We need to involve the local people also, so that this OPEX and this maintenance problem can be resolved by them. They should own that technology. So this PM1 is a starting of that. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So what we felt is in PM1, PDO and PDOA, that is the aggregator, he has to arrange a lot of things. Like he has to arrange a cloud, he has to arrange SMS server, he has to arrange your payment gateway. Then he must acquire this much of technical know-how, how to operate those things. He had to spend a lot of money as well as in term manpower. And then revenue generation, it's very, very less. It's not that in rural revenue generation is less, but this is the investment phase. First, you need to make people understand that this is for them for them and from them. Then only the integration will start and it will take away. Now we have 56,000 plus PDOs across the India, around 59 PDOAs there. So what we did is we provide all those services in bundle form as a service. They need not to take cloud. They need not to take any this one. We are assisting them in SMS server as well as payment gateway, and we are providing in the help center 24/7. This helpline also help us CDOT has provided them. So now people are understanding, and slowly it is taking off. Initially, we want participation, and still I am declaring government wants, CDOT want participation from all the agencies, all the organizations for upliftment of this common man in rural areas. People came forward and they provided solutions also. We tested those solutions, we integrated our solution with them. But when they saw, I don't want to name, when they saw there is business case is not there, OPEX is very difficult, they back out. So here, CDOT, once again, we took that challenge and we developed subscriber management module, PDO management, voucher management, hotspot management, PDOA, PDO revenue settlement, PDO portal. We are developing and will slowly, we started rolling out all these solutions because this journey can't put at halt. It has to go. We need to uplift our rural people population. There are a large 70% plus population is residing in rural areas. The government is very serious, and CDOT, based on government policies, we are developing those solutions. These are, since time is less, otherwise this is a separate chapters for presentation. So just I am going to a little bit touching this area as a title on. Next slide, please. So CDOT is developing those things. This is the some technologies which is already deployed in rural India. It has been developed, and our TOT partner ITI, Aggressive, and other, they are producing those systems. In CSC, it has been deployed. In BBNL, it has been deployed. So many places, our PDOA solution is being taken by BSNL. Railtel is under process, and this MTNL is also taking our solutions. So this is readily available. Next slide, please. So in our 4G, recently we have conducted the trial for our core this network, and also we have designed our RAN solution. It is ready. So this has been concluded with TCS as a system integrator in BSNL network in Chandigarh and Ambala, and shortly we are rolling it out in BSNL network in 6,000 sites. We are about to get the order for that. For this our 4G solutions. So this is also available with us. 4G core is available, RAN is also available. Next slide, please. So now CDOT is working in 5G NSA, non-standalone core, and this we are going to roll out in this year only, in December 22. As well as CDOT is working for Open RAN standards, its RAN solution. And that prototype we are going to launch somewhere in December 23. So that is our roadmap. Next slide, please. So for 5G, the main challenge is for different services and customer, their bandwidth reservation, as well as SLAs, network slicing, and all. So CDOT optical technology portfolio, which has fueled to BBNL like GPON, XGS PON, NGN PON 2, several solutions are there. We have our own WDM, POTP solution is there, which is working in BSNL, MTNL, and Railtel networks since last 3 to 4 years. So by combining those, we are also designing, rather we have some solutions in form of backhaul, front haul, mid haul for this 5G networks, and we are bundling those things with our own developed solutions of 5G. Next slide, please. So here you can see 5G is, when you say Open RAN, it is mainly your core-based this one data center specific, and when you reach to the antenna RF, in between so many things are there as per topology. you have a multi-rack this enhanced edge computing. Then you have a centralized unit, CU, DU, multiple DUs are connected to CU, and one DU is supporting multiple RRH, RRU, and then it is connected to antenna where latency and this everything is very important. So taking care of as per standards, as per 3GPP, ITU, these standards, we are designing those solutions, and it is in some form available to us. If anybody wants, we can supply those solutions also. Next slide, please. So here, as discussed, front haul, mid haul, and this back haul in 5G, BBU functions are split between CU, DU, and with RRH. So it's a CPRI, eCPRI terminated at DU, which allows for statistical multiplexing over mid haul network. Mid haul is expected to be similar to back haul, while front haul will have stringent requirement in terms of latency. Beside WDM and OTN based solutions, XGS-PON is also suitable. By the way, we have taken its TSDSI certification, and we have tested this solution in MTNL network. So this is also readily available with CDOT. Next slide, please. So here is the case study of Maharashtra Akola. As it has been described by previous speakers, the biggest problem or the restriction is laying of the fiber up to the village. And then after laying off, what we faced that maintaining the fiber in rural area is a big task. It's a big task. CDOT has fiber fault localization solutions where at centralized place, you can monitor at up to accuracy of 5 to 10 meters where exactly fiber cut is there. And you can locate that on map also. It can send you SMS as well as MMS. The moment fiber cut is there, then you will get that, and so that that alert team can be mobilized. But for rural and remote areas everywhere, maintaining these things, digging this and this one, because maintaining the SLA is very difficult. So what we proposed under USOFA project, USOF have funded this project. In place of laying this fiber to individual villages, we have taken from individual Gram Panchayat where CDOT GPON solution is already there. We took that as a backhaul and we installed CDOT designed Wi-Fi solution there. So from there to 2.5 to 5 or even up to 7 or 10 kilometers, we utilized point-to-point Wi-Fi linked with our own technology, and we created a hotspot there in village. So this has been this way, three POP locations, we covered 11 locations, 11 villages in Akola district, Maharashtra. And further, we have created multiple hotspots in the villages. And why I am telling this, it is not only just for quicker, fiber will go there with its own way. But if fiber cut is there, then it can be utilized as a fallback. Or till fiber is not there, by that time services can be utilized with this solution. As I described, this most costly part is backhaul. The backhaul cost in developing countries and especially in the rural area, either it is not available, even if it is available, then SLAs, it's very difficult to maintain and cost is obviously very high. So for that, what our ministry told that more than 97-98% of the internet traffic is going in entertainment and in other services rather than in education content or e-health sort of things. So we created local content server in villages where we put education content, NCRT books are there, and they are local, like if some library is there in Akola we have visited, so we promised them, it is under implementation. There lot many people are coming and delivering the lecture. They used to upload the lecture on YouTube. To access the YouTube, you require internet connectivity. But what we proposed them, and we are doing that, we have already tested that thing in our lab, that these lectures, rather than uploading on YouTube, because that internet, this bandwidth is less, we can put them in our content server. So this can easily be accessed by local people without internet. So we have designed a technology where one box is delivering you internet, it will delivering you is e-education content, local content without internet, as well as we have designed a technology where you can receive this free DD channels at one place, and you can put that in through this Wi-Fi and can easily be accessed through local people through Wi-Fi on their mobile phone or laptops without any spending any money on this free of cost. So this way our dependency on backhaul can be reduced. Next slide, please. So here you can say this is the example of local content delivery e-education, which is already we have this deployed in Akola, Maharashtra, and also we are doing it in Karnataka, someplace there. So next slide, please. So when I'm saying that this along with internet, local content, as well as this DD and FM channel, so here you can see it is already deployed under one box, which has been designed by CDOT. This is CDOT technology. It is a true convergence of terrestrial technology to non-terrestrial technology. Even if you don't have backhaul because of fiber outage, fiber cut is there, then also these local content and this free DD channels and FM channels can be utilized by those people. So with these things, I would like to stop myself. So CDOT means like from not only developing the technology for showcase, but also we are developing the things such that it can be utilized by local people, and also we are designing the dashboard for our each and every individual CPE, customer premise equipment, and this, and that dashboard is different for local people. They are also getting like PDO dashboard is there, PDOA dashboard is there, as well as this NOC is there. So that you are not only monitoring the SLA, you are also generating the dockets, as well as you can raise your fault ticket. However, fault ticket is being raised through our NMS automatically also, so that we can quickly fix the problems. So with these words, we need CDOT is doors are open to collaborate with all the organizations. Anybody can come, and we are ready to collaborate if you have some better idea or solutions for the upliftment of rural population or remote population. And CDOT is committed for this upliftment of rural and remote areas, and our technologies are also aligned in that direction. With these words, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dalela, for providing the insights on CDOT initiatives on the various fronts such as Wi-Fi, PM-WANI, optical, 4G and 5G solutions, and how we are giving the complete end-to-end solution, taking care of service delivery as well as the network management. Now, we would now like to open the floor for questions. I would request Mr. Calvin Chan from ITU to please read out any questions that may have come from the audience. Calvin?
Thank you very much. I'll read out the first two questions, which were directed by the participant towards Mr. Gaurav Karad. The questions were, what were the reasons that Tonga did not use satellite, for example, Intelsat, for its communications links so far, well before the event? Could this include costs or low business traffic, for example? The second question is regarding the isolation of Tonga and how they are the best use cases for satellite communications. And the question is, what are the reasons that satellite communication systems have not been deployed in the many years we've had in other countries in the region?
Okay, I hope you can hear me. I think both of the questions have a similar grain of thought as to why satellite was not being used by Tonga. So it's not that satellite was never being used by Tonga. It was being used for several years. But around the year 2013, that's when the undersea cable was deployed across the Tongan Islands and across between Tonga and Fiji, and that connected them to mainland Australia. The reason, of course, satellite is expensive. So no doubt about saying that the cost per megabit over satellite is never going to be equal to the cost per megabit on a fiber link. Okay. Now, Newer technologies on satellite are definitely bringing down the costs, and Neha Satak did mention about how newer bands and newer constellations will improve not just the economics but also the performance and the latency, etc. But back to Tonga, they were using satellites. They still had satellite as backup in certain areas, but their reliance on cable increased, undersea cable increased over time to a point wherein they disregarded the use of satellite. So they, as I said, the South Pacific University was still operational on satellite technology, but then most of the other corporates or businesses or users across Tonga had moved away from satellite, and I think that was the key element. And if you recall, one of the learnings which I mentioned was for places like Tonga, including disaster-prone places in India, we should have a mechanism to keep satellite as a backup alive with a low amount of data rate, so that in the event of a disaster, that low amount of data rate ensures that you have a heartbeat going on, but then we can quickly add on more capacity during a disaster and therefore use satellite. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaurav, for your kind answer. I'll read out the next round of questions in the chat. So these are directed toward Ms. Neha. So the first question is, we see mobile terrestrial user devices achieving 100 megabytes per second speed. What will be the average download speeds that satellite user terminals can achieve in the near future? Can such speeds be comparable with terrestrial applications provided for satellite users? And the second question is for you, but I believe it's also directed towards all the speakers. And it's about whether speakers have a view on high altitude platform stations as an IMT base station as a future solution for rural communication, which may best serve in cost, implementation, and capacity.
Great. Thank you so much for the question. Just to preface my answer, yes, 100 Mbps kind of speeds have been achieved on mobile phones. But let's look at how the satellite network capacity is going to be utilized in the future. So one of the main utilization points that we think will happen is through satellite backhaul for telecom towers. And there the capacities that one would be able to deliver using high frequency bands will be half a Gbps to even 1 Gbps kind of capacity per tower. Given that that's the backdrop, I think through those mobile towers which are powered by satellites, I think 100 Mbps kind of download speeds are entirely possible. I hope that answers your questions. Of course, there is another set of satellite constellations that are coming up, which will have direct to mobile communication, and there I think the speeds are yet to be seen. But I feel that the speeds there will be substantial, but may not be till 100 Mbps kind of download speeds. Yeah, that's kind of my answer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Neha, for your answer. And so the second question was regarding the HAPS as IMT base stations, in case anyone would like to answer this question as well.
Can I take that? If Mr. Dalera doesn't want to take that?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I think that's the technology of the future that we are all looking at, high altitude platform system. I think that's a great question. Intelsat, we are a part of a HAPS alliance globally. HAPS is primarily an aircraft that sits around 50,000 feet, just on the edge of the stratosphere, just higher than the current set of aeroplanes that carry us around. They fly in a set pattern, providing coverage over, let's say, 200 to 250 kilometers on the ground in diameter. And the beauty about this is like an airplane. This can be easily launched. And if you have a 5G infrastructure on top of the HAPS platform, this can be flown like an aeroplane, and it can hover around the epicenter of any village, rural area, disaster area, etc. And it is solar powered. It has a life. It can fly for up to 6 months, hovering around the same place. and it can beam down on the affected area or the rural area. And these are not too expensive. They could be sitting on the ground, funded by global agencies like ITU, UN, etc. And they can be deployed quickly within 24 hours. So I think that's a great idea. This could be the future of how 5G deployments happen for 5G in rural areas, but also I would say for disaster relief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaurav. I would probably, in the interest of time, move on to the next round of questions, which are directed to Dr. Pankaj. So the first question is regarding DVB-T2 Wi-Fi gateway. Has CDOT deployed such solutions for using at a village level, and if so, where? The second question is around the local content delivery system hardware. Is it a local product made in India? And the third question, I believe, is about whether universities and colleges in suburbs. Actually, no, that's for somebody else. So those are the first two questions. No, sorry, the third question is how many people can be connected at the same time with the DVB-T2 Wi-Fi gateway?
Okay. So how many peoples can be connected by gateway? It is since the physical layer is Wi-Fi, and in our this provided technology, we are using presently two radios, 2.4 gigahertz as well as 5 gigahertz. Up to 200 simultaneous users can be connected with a single box. However, its coverage and the capacity is limited by RF propagation phenomena. For example, we have installed our system in Akola, where up to 200 meters, 150 meters, we are getting good coverage, but that is in line of sight. When we got a complaint, hardly there was a library at 30 meters apart. Indoor coverage was not there because two roofs, G+2 and G+1, as well as 5 walls are there. So everywhere 5 dB loss is there. So around 30 dB loss is there. So 30 dB loss Wi-Fi means you are not getting anything. So we decided to put a repeater there. So this is a RF planning that if some important place like schools or universities you are finding, and there you want indoor coverage in laboratory or in library things, so there you can always put a repeater or another, you can create a indoor hotspot. We have indoor as well as outdoor hotspot, that solutions are available with us. And as far as local content things are there, so that local content has been designed in-house in CDOT, and this we have already deployed. And again, number of subscriber and all this is being restricted by physical layer of our this technology. In present case, it is Wi-Fi and as well as coverage. So that is the answer. However, that can be enhanced with appropriate radio planning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pankaj. There's an additional question for you in the chat about whether universities and colleges in suburbs can be leveraged for reaching rural areas with PM1 and CDOT technologies. And are there any links to review the same or your email?
Yes, universities can become PDOA if it is a group of universities, or they can become PDO with tying up some of PDOA, like BBNL is also now PDOA, and their presence is in rural area is quite good. BSNL is also CDOT PDOA. So that way, yes, they can join this PM1E framework, and they can call, it is available on CDOT website, that number. They can call CDOT help desk for PM1E and we will facilitate.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pankaj. I believe that is all the questions that have been asked for this non-terrestrial technology session. I'll turn the floor back over to Ms. Charamati.
So thank you very much, all of you. And it was a very good session today. We had the right tone set for the seminar by Ms. Atsuko Okuda and Professor Uday Desai. And in the first part of the seminar, so Professor Gandhi gave us the perspective of how rural technology requirement should be taken care while preparing the standards itself. So it starts at the stage of standardization. And then we had a talk from Dr. Mohammad Danesh on the solutions available from Trans-Celestial which are high speed links that can be established in a very short span of time. So the laser technologies solutions were explained by Dr. Mohammad Danesh. Then we had a very good talk by Dr. Walid Matlauti, where he had shared his experiences on the various calculators that they have made with respect to the last mile connectivity solution. So many a times it is not just about the technology, it is also about how the technology is deployed. So the deployment plays a very key role, and that is what was explained by Dr. Walid Matlauti. Then in this session of the non-terrestrial technologies, I would thank Mr. Gaurav again for providing that how satellite communication, I felt really after the Tonga use case that it can be the go-to solution in case of disaster. With the right kind of planning done, I think we can, like avert a lot of things, and we can provide the relief at the right time if we have the satellite communication infrastructure set. And Miss Neha, again, I would really like to congratulate the way Astrom has really built up from being an E-band and now the SATCOM solutions. It is really exciting to see an Indian startup coming up on the full front for the satellite communication, which I believe is going to be the solution for the remote and the disaster solutions. And then our director, sir, Dr. Pankaj Dalela, where he covered the complete set of solution. And like as he rightly said, it is not about giving the right transport or the right access, but having the right service delivery model, which is going to be a crucial factor for the success of the networks in the rural and remote areas. So we have covered standardization, we have covered the solutions available, the challenges faced, and the complete service delivery model. So I think it was a fulfilling session today, and I would thank everyone who have joined today's webinar. And the next webinar in this series is going to be on 5G and FinTech revolutions. And it is tentatively planned on 12th May. And TSDSI will be sharing the details soon on their website. Thank you all and have a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.